during that court time. There are so many people don't understand that you don't have to be against police. I am not against, or I'm not saying, delete, abolish. No, we do need, but we need to change so many rules and regulation. We need to hold them accountable. I'm a nurse. I took training more than the police had. We are held to a higher standard. We took an oath to protect. I never felt the need to kill or choke one of my patients because they were combative. So what can we do? Where do you stand when it comes to?
You just brought up a great point. I just was talking to a senior member of law enforcement, and he said, doctors train for 8 years to save a life.
Yeah,
police
true.
can train for as little as 8 weeks to be trusted whether they take a life or not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a real disparity there, and I think that needs to change. I think there needs to be enhanced uniform training across the police spectrum. And I'm like you. I don't believe that the police, that they need to be defunded or eliminated or abolished or whatever the expression is. And when I was mayor of Braddock for 4 terms, I was in charge of a police department. And we had a significant gun violence issue here in our community. And I reformed and instituted community policing, but we also eliminated gun deaths and violent deaths in Braddock for 5.5 years without incurring any kinds of or allegations of police abuse, let alone anything serious like a shooting or anything like that. It can be done, and I've actually done that, because police need to be on the same team as the community, and the community needs to understand that they are not occupiers. They are not someone that you need to be afraid of, and the police need to understand that everyone is
not a threat.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we did, and for me, the most powerful weapon an officer has is his or her discretion, because that discretion will determine, am I going to pull my gun? Am I going to pull my taser? Or am I going to let something slide that doesn't need to be addressed? Like,
but don't you think, sorry to interrupt you, but don't you think if we leave it for someone's discretion, like my discretion might not be your discretion? Do we need clear laws, or you think,
well, sure.
and training? How do you feel about that?
Discretion improves with better training and better screening and better empathy. And by discretion, I mean, if you look at some of these cases, if somebody's selling cigarettes individually, yeah, that might be against the law. That doesn't mean you need to swarm on them and make that into a situation that can escalate or can create something. So often a lot of these circumstances arise from interactions that just shouldn't have never occurred in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's always been, at least in Braddock, it's always about public safety and making sure that our community can trust police, and police trust is undermined when you become petty or you start, making these kind of uneven enforcements, and it's just not very dignified, and it doesn't help and foster trust in police and public safety. So there does need to be some reforms and so forth. But at the end of the day, we can't make the police the uniform enemy of everybody. It needs to require some
communication.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can.
And how can we do that? How can we? There is a mistrust. There is a loss of trust now. And to me, hate and division is the main enemy for all of us. If we only understand that, we are asking from the police, and Rosa, I believe that's her name. She wrote a book, and one of the statement that stood out is like, you cannot expect the police to be a social worker and all of the above when their training is limited. And that's what we're asking. So what can we do to bring and bridge that gap? How can we have the public trust the police, and how we can make people understand that we're not treating you as enemy, and you don't need to look at us as a threat.
Yeah, and police as across the board need to be open to reforming their ranks. They need to be open to holding their own accountable. They need to be open to having a conversation where it's like, hey, how can we be better partners in public safety. That's the way I look at it. Public safety is a public good, and it takes the community to maintain that. It takes the police to maintain that. And they both need to understand that they have a stake in that, and they have roles and they have obligations on both sides. And a conversation and a dialogue when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to engage or to interact, and when it's appropriate to have social services instead of sending in a police officer, that it would be much more appropriate to address it through someone with social services. And that's reimagining what policing can be, because I agree with that comment. Police are not necessarily trained or equipped to handle some of these circumstances where these interactions can occur and turn really unfortunate and tragic.
Gisele, how do you feel?
I think definitely America it's a culture, it's very different here than in other countries in regards to police. I think, we incarcerate more people in this country than anywhere else. I think there are patterns that if we follow, you'll see them across, police, across prisons, across education, and they're all interrelated. So I think it's prioritizing how we invest in things. But I think there's this danger in devaluing people, right? And we see that. We see entire groups of people who have been devalued. It's from the way we pay them, right? It's the way that we speak to them. It's how we treat immigrants. And all those things connect and translate into what we see as bigger issues in this country. So I think love is missing. I think compassion is missing in a big sense. But having conversations with people who think differently than you, who look differently than you. It's like, I talk to a lot, I'll speak to folks who, let's say, for example, are super anti-immigrant, and they'll say, but like, you do such nice things. I think you're great. I just have an issue with all the other ones, right? Or like, well, your family should have come lead